Okay, we're live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, returning guest. His name is Stephen DeMattis. He operates the Biblical Hitmen. This will be our fourth episode. We did one just on the Mother Goddess. We've also covered Crowley and the Mark of the Beast, which is a really interesting one. I really recommend people go back in my catalog and listen to those episodes. But the Mark of the Beast is a really good one. So is the Mother Goddess, really important. It's going to tie into our topic today, which is just my ongoing investigation into the Epstein files. We were talking at the end of the last show, and he had done some research into this 2-hour discussion or interview between Bannon and Epstein that took place somewhere in 2019, mid 2019. Epstein was arrested in July, so it was July 6th at Teterboro. But before that, there was this long term, and I've done a show on Bannon too. But this attempt by Bannon, he was hired by Epstein to kind of rehab his image. And I think that this video was part of that. It's a very telling interview in a lot of ways. That's kind of rehabbing he was 66 at the time, kind of rehabbing Epstein's image, this was never released, but it was kind of, I don't think you were ever even supposed to hear Bannon's voice. It seemed like that was part of the elements of what I learned from watching this video. But there's a lot of elements of this, a lot of things. It starts off with Santa Fe. Of course, the intro show, like the pre-show where I'm talking to Steven, is probably just as interesting. We can go over some of the stuff we talked about. But there's a lot of references and a lot of important things that they talk about. I think that show a different facet of this whole Epstein files situation that we can talk more about. So Steven Matisse, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back, William. It's always going to be a pleasure, doing a shows with you. And look at this handsome young gentleman over here. This guy's responsible for a lot of stuff, man. The network that he was involved in, and probably that he ended up establishing and creating, because everyone kind of loved Jeffrey Epstein. You could see it in the emails. You could see how a lot of people maybe fluff him up because he's just such a philanthropist, and he's at a high level status of adeptness or an eliteness within the networks that he's a part of, man. But yeah, the Bannon interview, I remember watching it when the files dropped. It was just the first thing that I got into. It was the first thing that I feel the Lord just kind of brought me into to examine, evaluate, and just try to pick out certain things that I know are completely obvious in the esoteric and the mystical realm of things. And that's one thing that I think that this interview generalizes is Epstein's esotericism and his fascination with the miracles of life. Like, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think he finishes off this 2 hours with that. He goes into dark matter and the soul. He believes in the soul. They really kind of get into that at the end. I thought it was an interesting component because you never see that him talking about that at the other stuff. And miracles, life's a miracle. So it's like a weird kind of thing to hear him state that when you look at his past and the trafficking and the pedophilia and the missing people and the network, like you mentioned. So this is like PR stuff, but
that's how I saw it. Like, I don't know what, how much you've covered of Bannon, but Bannon's a part of the CNP. Right, Council on National Policy. He's a part of this elite cabal system that likes to manipulate the masses and to control media with all of these things. So that's why I was like, they released an uncensored interview between Bannon and Epstein. I was like, what's going on here? Because I'm trying to evaluate psyops as they come and go. And this one I feel was not so psyopy, but it was more or less like getting the information out there that Epstein was, number one, very obsessed with in some sort of ways, how brilliant of a man he actually was, even though his education kind of isn't at the highest levels. But I do think Epstein was a smart man, and that's why a lot of people respected him, because I think what he did with his money is he formed these groups, and he plugged himself into networks that the smartest people in the world were a part of. And so he was kind of just funding them as they went, and trying to help them pursue the interests that they had. Which a lot of these scientists today, they have a lot of occult interests. They have a lot of quantum interests. They have a lot of Kabbalah interests. These scientists today are almost like modern day alchemists. And so I think that what he was really trying to not only educate himself on, but also try to measure these things. He wanted to try and measure the soul. He wanted to try and maybe, you know, alchemical, if the word is that, try to evolutionize his consciousness, try to evolutionize his human form. And I think he was trying to pursue that through not only consciousness, but actually maybe even funding things to where they can create a biological vessel that he can transfer his consciousness into. I mean, at the end of the day, with how he's connected to genetics, and he's connected to physicists, nuclear physicists, it just goes on to where I think that even an AI robot, to where he could transfer his consciousness into a robot, was even a possibility, with his connections with Hanson Robotics, and his connections with Geno Yu, which was kind of like, he was like the meditative route. He was more of like the Eastern religious side of it, rather than like the scientific side. But yeah, I just think this guy was into everything. And I think it all really starts by him in the interview talking about how he got involved with the Trilateral Commission, and how he was friends with John D. Rockefeller, and he was very close with him. And his whole breakdown of what the Trilateral Commission is pretty much, if you do your research on it, that it's pretty obvious that this is a group of people that outlast politicians, and they understand money and the financial system way better than government. And so thus they are naturally at a higher depth of power than the governments. I mean, it's crazy.
Right. They admit it in this thing. That's the intro. And that's what he's learning at the feet of Rockefeller and the Trilateral Commission, talking about world politics and businessmen running everything. He even admits, like, oh, politicians come and go for, say, 8 years or whatever. So these are incredible admissions. He mentions the Illuminati. He even says, and he, like you mentioned, the word alchemy. It's mentioned in this 2-hour discussion too. Like, they have all these words and stuff like that, code words. But it's really interesting. He was 30 years old. So how does he get there to sitting with David Rockefeller? And Rockefeller's telling him personal stories. So he either got those from a book, or Rockefeller literally was telling him personal stories as a young man, like fairly young man, a 30-year-old. So I just thought that was really a huge tell. Like, this guy, and then he mentions himself, he's just a good kid at the 7-minute mark. I was just a good kid. And really, really revealing, like, fractionalized banking, like the mystery of alchemy of fractionalized banking. He even admits this thing, which everybody, well, at least in the alternate media, knows. He's like, most people wouldn't know the bank doesn't hold your money, like these are things that were kind of conspiracy tropes for forever, for the, Paul, or, all these other guys have been talking about it for years, but it's like the scam of the Federal Reserve. So it's worth time. It's worth watching. I think this 2 hours.
Oh, definitely. You know what this all kind of made me think of when I was listening to him talk, and understanding that he definitely has affiliation with, like, Illuminati councils, and Freemasonry, and all of these kind of secret societies that are doing very immoral things, doing very ritualistic immoral things. It made me think of the movie Eyes Wide Shut. And not that there's 2 characters in that movie that are very important, right? I'd say there's 3. There's Nicole Kidman, who is Alice, right? There's Tom Cruise, who's Bill. Bill is like this doctor. He's a personal doctor four, who's known in the movie as Victor. Victor is the Illuminati guy. He's like the high priest of these sex cults and all these things, where they're doing rituals and they're doing it to really kind of squash and kind of like destroy the ego, but then you reincorporate the ego. That's the biggest thing with the masks and the night ball that they had in the movie, where a lot of immoral things were happening and stuff. It's really meant to try and destroy the ego, so that it really has everything to do with sin. It's almost like where you almost incorporate sin a part of you, and you forget of just how bad it really is. It becomes a part of you at that point. And it has something to do with alchemy. It has something to do with evolving your consciousness to a certain state. And so what's funny is I think Epstein was like the Tom Cruise in Eyes Wide Shut. And at a young age, right? Like he gets into this trilateral commission at 30 years old, and it's almost like John D. Rockefeller was Victor Ziegler in the movie, right? His right-hand man kind of helped him in certain situations. People used Epstein because of how brilliant he was with finance. And that's one thing too that he talked about in the interview, was basically global finance and economics. And pretty much people would go to him because he had intuition about the finance system when people wanted to rely on others that can study and recognize patterns, right? Everyone's obsessed with patterns because it's objective, it's a statistic, it's factual in certain ways. And at some point, those people aren't as good as the ones in the same industry that are able to have a high level of intuition, feelings, where they know things are going to go bad. And that's one thing that Epstein talked about in the interview, was he tried to again, you can't really measure or describe the financial system. That's one thing that he's really big on throughout the whole interview, with many different aspects of life. But he's like, the financial system is about complex systems on top of complex systems on top of complex systems. And it's almost like how our body works. There's a circulatory system, a respiratory system. There's there's nephrology, there's neurology. There's all different kinds of compartmentalized systems that at the end of the day, they all work together as one. But why Bannon was asking him about in the interview about the '08 crisis is he was trying to get out of Epstein an answer of how did you know this was going to collapse, or how did you know something of a crisis was around the corner? And Epstein was like, how do you know that you're going to have a heart attack before you have a heart attack? It's like, there really is no way to technically measure it. It's more of like, you have like this feeling, this intuition. You can see that people are, I'm kind of allegorizing it medically, like it's funny because I'm a paramedic too. So I can walk in a house and go, yeah, that person's a diabetic, just by like kind of looking at them and getting a feeling of like just a general impression. And that's kind of what Epstein was really good at. He could look at and analyze things, and he can go, yeah, this is this problem, this problem, this problem, before he even really flipped through all of the pages with that kind of stuff.
It's amazing. He also goes into chaos theory. He talks about one grain of sand on a sand dune. Like he's kind of, it's almost like a college talk or something. Like these guys zip through philosophers, not at a super deep level, but they do reference a lot of that stuff during their discussion. But it is interesting. And Eyes Wide Shut is like a perfect analogy. It is interesting. I want to bring something up to you because it's kind of a mind-blowing connection between Epstein and Eyes Wide Shut. And one of many. I've done a show on Epstein and Eyes Wide Shut, but this will blow your mind. In the guy who wrote about Jeffrey Epstein dying is a guy named Larry Salona. Have you ever heard this story?
No, but I recognize that article down there at the bottom. That's from the movie.
Yeah, but Larry Salona was friends with Kubrick and literally wrote this stuff for him, and his name is on there.
My God.
So he wrote, this is a real article above, and then that's the article from 1999. So he literally wrote about Epstein's apparent suicide and literally wrote something for Eyes Wide Shut. But that's the intro. Get this. This will just blow your mind. Guess who was on one of Epstein flight logs back in 1999? Larry Salona.
Oh, wow.
Is that crazy?
That's wild, dude.
In 1990, this is from the files, guys. This is EFTA number 01246931. You can just go check it out. This is an incredible piece of like eyes wide shut lore. And if you remember, you mentioned Ziegler. He's in this mansion, that final scene where he's in the billiard room or whatever. It's almost like the mansion that Epstein's at. A lot of like the similarities. And this was filmed at his mansion, this 2-hour thing with Epstein. But it says in 1999, Larry Salona rides with Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and others on the Lolita Express from Teterboro, New Jersey to Palm Beach for a short weekend. They return with 2 extra women. So Salona is writing for and consulting about Eyes Wide Shut and living with Epstein. So how much of Epstein's lifestyle was leached into Kubrick's understanding from Larry Salona? That's a bigger question. This guy should be interviewed. I don't even know if he's still alive.
You know what's crazy is I bet if Kubrick made a sequel to Eyes Wide Shut, there'd be an island in there somewhere.
There'd be a what?
There'd be an island in there somewhere.
Oh, I think you're right.
Like,
yeah.
Come on.
Well, I did a show on Blink Twice, which was made in 2024, and it's like there's so many parallels between Epstein and them, and literal pictures of like Trump with the director's dad, who is Lenny Kravitz. It was directed by Zoe Kravitz, and Trump is definitely part of the network. He's just totally ingrained in it. But check out Blink Twice. Have you seen Blink Twice?
No, I got to check that out.
Yeah, I can do a show with you on that. That's a good one.
Okay.
It's really interesting. There's art overlaps and stuff like that from the film and Epstein. But it is, I mean, there's just incredible overlaps and parallels and stuff like that.
It's wild, man. It's wild. You know, and that's how I think these people operate. I think that these people how they use their money, like I said earlier, is they like to get familiar and they like to kind of infiltrate these scientific communities that are based off of mathematicians and, you know, scientists, physicists, to where these people with the money, right? These philanthropists, these elites, these businessmen, that they want to learn how the whole entire world works, because it's all broken down into systems at the end of the day. And so I think that what they want to do is with funding these things, they want to be able to have the general knowledge of as much as they can, where then now they do understand the system way better than, you know, an individual who's compartmentalized in just one section of it. For example, you know, how our medical system right now is broken down. It's neurology, it's, you know, oncology, it's respiratory, it's cardiology, it's, you know, it just goes on and on and on like that. But what these people with the money, they want to do is they want to understand how all of these systems work. So now they can really be at a higher level of just not only intuition, but they can also have superiority over the rest of them, knowledge-wise. And there's like a God complex to this stuff, man. And so, you know, in the interview, I think one of the most interesting things that was talked about was the strange things that Epstein was funding to try and learn and to try and figure out. You know, this was a big part of Santa Fe Institute. This was a big part of him with complexity theory. You know, he wanted to create attempts to, you know, mathematize markets, and he wanted to also, you know, learn about genetic algorithms, and he wanted to predict limits, right, of life, just in general, everything about life. This even gets into why he was affiliated with Marvin Minsky, right? This isn't in the interview. This is something that I've found, you know, on the side, but he was really good friends with Marvin Minsky, and Marvin Minsky is like this godfather of artificial intelligence. And Marvin Minsky is actually related to kind of like this ancient rabbi in the 16th century called Rabbi Judo Low.
Wow.
And what's interesting about Marvin Minsky and his relationship with his family member from the past with the Jewish folklore is that Marvin Minsky was not only the godfather of artificial intelligence, but his ancient I forget, grandfather or something like this. Um, Rabbi Judah Low created the golem. This is like this Jewish folklore of this 16th century Prague rabbi, Kabbalist, Talmudist, where he was under great heavy persecution by the people that was surrounding the Jewish people at that time. And because of his esoteric and his mystic studies with Kabbalah, he learned how to actually create life. And what he did is he went out down towards the waterfront. He took his family there and they helped him create what was the golem. The golem was this clay man, right? So he creates this golem and he writes on the forehead of it, Emmet. I think it's Emmet or something like that. But that pretty much was like a seal for the entity that they were about to birth. And so he creates this golem and then he puts life into it. And this golem, comes to life, serves as a protector, serves as almost like how like Lady Justice, there's a divine feminine tie-in a little bit right there, where pretty much it was the authority to help the Jewish people from persecution. And so what actually happened is the golem went rogue and the golem started destroying everything and it lost its programming, let's just say. And what Rabbi Lowe did is he erased the first letter of the seal on its forehead and it deprogrammed the golem and it took the life out of it. And so you have literally Rabbi Judah Lowe creating what was artificial intelligence back in the 16th century. And he's related to Marvin Minsky, who's the godfather of artificial intelligence and created AI lab at MIT. So it's crazy, the connections here. And that's one thing too that Epstein was mentioning about and how artificial intelligence works is he really explained that the creators of artificial intelligence cannot measure, they cannot they cannot calculate how the artificial intelligence truly works, and thus it's a miracle. And he discusses it that it's a bunch of neural net complex systems on top of neural net complex systems that we today are very used to the calculator, right? We know how a calculator works. We put in numbers and we know it makes sense and we hit equal and it comes out with an answer. That's what we are programmed to. But he's explaining in the interview that that's not how artificial intelligence works. And the greatest of all the mathematicians in the entire world and the people who created the artificial intelligence cannot tell you how this AI actually truly gives you an answer. So thus he calls it a miracle, right? This is where you get him talking about miracles and stuff. Then what's interesting is he ties in Newton into the conversation because he's actually leading you in the interview of how to define what a miracle is. And Newton claimed, right, that how gravity ends up working is that you have a force that pushes an object, right, and it goes in that certain direction. So pretty much if I have my phone on my desk right now, if I push it with my hand till it gets to the edge, it's going to fall down. But Newton was he was curious of that. He was like, how did that go down if nothing pushed it? Right? So Newton, in some sort of way, with his experiments and his knowledge of gravity, he calls gravity basically like a miracle from God. And so therefore, miracles then have a tie-in to what God is. And so that's what's really one of the main points of why these people are trying to figure out all the things that they're trying to figure out. Because I think at some point, if they can mathematize that, if they can measure that, and if they can calculate it and they can create it themselves, then they themselves can be God. And I think that that's one huge thing why Epstein was doing what he was doing. He wants to be God.
I think you're right. All these people together is trying to like make a new being. You mentioned Minsky. And Virginia Giuffre said that she was sent by Epstein to Minsky. Like, he's an older dude. But you want to talk about another Kubrick tie-in? Guess who the main technical advisor for Hal was during Space Odyssey? Marvin
Oh,
Minsky.
whoa.
Yeah. So he was in
Whoa.
direct contact with Kubrick. I mean, you can just read, it's just like right there
Oh,
on
wow.
the Wikipedia for the film Space Odyssey, 2001 Space Odyssey. You mentioned Epstein was his friend. Epstein knew him so well, he put together his family trust. He oversaw the family trust. So, like, super close. Like, you can see the trust documents. Just go into DOJjustice.com and type in Minsky trust documents, and they'll pop up. Like, it's incredible.
Wow.
So, yeah. So the family, and Minsky's passed away, but he was, I think, the MIT Artificial Intelligence Lab. So these guys are talking about AI. Like, Epstein was involved in all this stuff for years, like a close personal friend. Minsky was probably at his house, is my guess.
Oh, and I bet, dude.
Yeah.
And you know what's wild too, right? So when he was over there in that Santa Fe area, right, you have a bunch of Los Alamos scientists, which pretty much, Los Alamos is, affiliated with the Manhattan Project and pretty much affiliated with, I think you even mentioned like Jack Parsons and these
100%.
I mean, these scientists that are occultists, okay? And what was going on in Los Alamos is there was a lot of fundings that were being cut, and therefore scientists only work on projects when they have the funding. And so Epstein found it in his favor to go out there to Santa Fe to buy property, which it had hundreds and hundreds and probably I don't know how many acres he had, where you can probably do all kinds of strange experiments out there. Well, he came in there and he started funding these scientists, and he started providing for them the financial stability that they needed to try and understand these strange things. And I find it so interesting, man, that he kept saying strange things. It's almost like the show Stranger Things, and what they were doing out there could have some sort of relation with, you know, the movie itself or the show itself. I know that that's like kind of based off the Montauk Project and all these things, but there's a bunch of independent projects out there that cross-examine each other. And it's not that it's like there are multiple cohorts out there for the same experiment. It's just, let's see how far this group has gone. Let's see how far this group has gone. Let's see what this group has lacked in. And so there's like this oversight of a monitor looking over the whole trial, if that makes sense, right? Because I've worked in clinical research, so I kind of like see how science is conducted through trials and things like this, and that's how I'm almost thinking why there's Bluebird, and there's MK Ultra, and there's these like little evolution changes as they go when it falls under a different director, but it's like they're all kind of the same thing. We're working towards a general idea. They're just compartmentalized and separated like a network, but all the information, the data is coming back to a central source, which I think that, I mean, at the end of the day, these businessmen and these philanthropists are part of all of that. And when you combine all of their money together, man, like, I don't think there's anything that they can't not fund. Like, they can fund whatever they want.
It's a real insight, isn't it? To see all the stuff he's funding. He makes sure to mention the word philanthropy during this interview too. And like, I like the word philanthropath. So he's in the same vein as Gates and all these other people, but he wants to make it sure like he's always funding good stuff. That's not the case. So he might be funding all that stuff, but there's more than 2 people or 3 people who were at the ranch, girls who said they were experimented on. Like, they were asleep and woke up and like, what the hell happened? And they just actually caught a guy, an Israeli, coming out of Greece who had human embryos, like female eggs, without any declaration. So he was trafficking them. And I think they were doing something like that. They were stealing the girls' eggs and things like that for experiments, and their babies. I think they were stealing fetuses too. And that's a common theme. This golem thing you mentioned goes through Frankenstein, Crowley's Moonchild, this whole thing of endowing inanimate things with something, some kind of thing. Or AIs like it, Goetzel's like it. Like this robot is really kind of like a step down the golem paradigm, But you mentioned the Suicide Squads. Christine Maxwell sat. So Jeffrey mentions the Santa Fe Institute at least twice in this interview, but right at the beginning. But who sits on there was his cohort, Ghislaine Maxwell's sister, Christine. She is a board member of the Santa Fe Institute. But one of the interesting things, I'll bring up their website. One of the interesting things about her is her husband's last name is Molina, and his dad is one of the members of the Suicide Squad with Parsons. So they were at the Arroyo Seco doing jet assisted takeoff stuff, and it was Jack Parsons, Alfred Molina, Molina. It's actually a Czech last name, and a guy by the name of Foreman. You can see pictures of them all the time, but literally this Molina's son is married to Christine Maxwell at Santa Fe Institute. You can't make it up. And then also the other thing is they have a monolith at the Santa Fe Institute, just like 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is a totally occult symbol, which is not even questionable. I'll see if I can find it.
That's crazy, man.
It's crazy. The connections are crazy.
Wow.
It's unbelievable.
And I thought one of the most interesting parts of the interview was at the 1 hour and 27-minute mark and 50 seconds. And I don't know if you could play that, but he goes into describing what he believes the soul to be.
Give me the timestamp again.
Yeah, 1:27:50. It's wild because he's talking about pretty much he gets into what Newton was discussing, kind of like what I was talking about. If I push my cell phone off this table, and like what was the force that pushed it down on the ground? Newton came to the conclusion that these are all miracles, and at the end of the day, it's whatever a miracle is, they can't explain, and if you can't explain it, therefore it's the power of God. And what's fascinating about that is when they look at things going on not only in the cosmos or out in space, right, where they see something moving towards, right, they see gravity is moving something towards a location, but they look at that location, there's nothing there. So it kind of defeats what our understanding of science, right? Because first of all, there has to be a force pushing that to make it go into that direction. But that's not how it's working. It's actually something that they can't see that's drawing it in. And so therefore they see those things happening in the brain, right? Because he talks about the dark matter of the brain, and he believes that it's where the soul is, or it is the soul. Like, this comes right out of his mouth. And what's interesting is I found a few things because of the episode we did on the Mark of the Beast technology, the quantum dots. He was if you look up quantum dot, you'll see that those are in the emails. And also they're in the files. There's nothing extremely tangible, like direct about it. It's more of like it can be speculated upon. But this is what I'm thinking here, because quantum dots act almost very similar to how we use contrast dye today. We put something in the body, and therefore we can run a bunch of other tests once we put that in the body, and we can see more clear. We can see more information that we're trying to get from what's going on inside the body. And for an example of this is like, if you have a stroke, they're pushing contrast dye to see where exactly that stroke is, because now they can measure it, they can calculate it, and now they can actually treat it. So what I think that they're trying to do is, with the dark matter of the brain, which they don't know, they can't calculate it, they can't measure it, they can't do all these things. But if you experiment with quantum dots, which are like little nanoparticles, I mean 1/130, the size of a quantum dot, man, is like it's extremely small. It's like 30,000 times smaller than the red blood cell. So if you can have these things moving around in the brain, and you can kind of measure them, and you can move them throughout the dark matter of the brain, I can only think that that's something that they're trying to do to measure it, to calculate it, to digitize it in some sort of way to where then they can figure out how to transfer it, man. Now that kind of gets a little conspiratorial, right? Gets a little speculation in there, but that's what I even think that they're possibly doing. And he talks here about the dark matter and the soul.
Okay, I'll play it now.
Yeah.
Alive in my world are miracles, not magic. Magic has a bad connotation.
We
trying
don't
to hide
believe in
things.
you don't believe in the spirit or the soul. That's what animates people, is your spirit or your soul. That's
No.
what have you ever seen someone die? When they die, their spirit leaves.
Their soul leaves, no question. So in
There's
fact,
no question to you about
no
that.
question.
There's no question to you that there is some animating life force within us that leaves when you're dead.
Yes, in fact, I refer to the soul. This obviously there's certain the questions in the past, even
Because
during
people would normally think you were soulless. So
Thank you.
But have you talk about you actually believe in it and have done some thinking about it is pretty shocking in its own right, isn't it?
well, again, mathematics, Leibniz thought.
So Newton was at Cambridge, and he was the head of the math department, right? He's a professor, essentially.
yes.
But Leibniz, was Leibniz a German professor?
Yes, but what Leibniz said is the soul is so strange because God took chemicals, which is simply the material, like tables, and he somehow made this material able to have a thought.
Oh, pause
How
that.
strange is that? Not only did
That right there is his reference to Marvin Minsky and the connection to the golem. He's like, how did God create something out of material and make it have a thought? Just like the Jewish folklore of Rabbi Lowe and what he did with the golem. It's like there. So you can see that what they're either trying to do is create a golem for themselves so that they can live forever, or the fact that they want to be gods themselves and co-create, just kind of like how Barbara Marx Hubbard and a bunch of the New Age affiliates are kind of talking about with this ascension in consciousness. You know, what do they really want to do with Neuralink, right? Like, what do they really want to do with these things? What power do they want to give to the human? Like, are they really talking about here or thinking about reversing the pre-Adamic sin? And what I mean by that is when you look at the Bible, you could see when Eve ate the fruit and gave to her husband and he ate the fruit as well, both of their eyes were opened. There was like this kind of something happened consciously to where they all of a sudden knew of what they did was wrong, and that they ended up covering themselves. They were naked. Like, there's something going on here through self-awareness. And so I think what they're trying to do is kind of reverse that, almost to bring humanity back to that God status, if there was any God status. I'm not trying to I'm trying to word this kind of carefully just because it's very intense. But I think what they're trying to do is bring back the state of humanity before sin entered the world, which is hilarious because these people worship Satan and Lucifer in many different ways. And what they're being tempted with is like another fruit that is being dangled in front of them, and they want to bite out of it so badly. They want to like reverse these things to become gods. It's wild.
It's amazing when you see this train of thought. Also, like, this is pretty incredible. Like, if you've watched this, you will know this website he's getting a lot of these ideas from the Santa Fe Institute, and you can see it just on their website. I'll bring it up right here. Watch this.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
how hard is it to encapsulate life?
There you go.
Can we measure irreversibility? Can we measure that?
Irreversibility.
Well, watch these other slides. They're incredible. Like, there's one that literally, like, he's probably climate policies. Where's the other one? What is the benefit of a brain? So it's thought.
Wow.
No, that was it. This is the one I wanted to show you, is this one. The economy is an evolving complex systems. He talks about complex systems in this thing. Like
Yes.
where did life begin? Where might it happen again?
Wow, we're actually getting more of a glimpse of what these scientific cohorts are actually trying to do. You know, like they're the real madmen. like, don't get me wrong, Epstein's a madman, but like these people are like they want to change the world. They want to change humanity, and they want to do it by the building blocks.
They sure do. This makes this interview with Bannon almost like Epstein is a spokesperson for the ideas at the Santa Fe Institute.
Right.
Because when you see the stuff that's here, it's like incredible.
I wonder what the symbol of it is up there in the corner. Looks like it's honestly like a star of Ishtar
or something.
It's weird.
I found a star of Ishtar at the Santa's the Little St. James. Let me see if I can find it. They actually have like an Ishtar sculpture on the ground.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
That's wild. You know what's crazy too is I watched like a 3-hour drone footage of a guy. I forget his name. I usually, whenever I refer to people's work, I try to shout him out, but I forgot his name. But anyways, he's flying his drone around in 4K, right? And he's going around it for 3 hours, and he's actually breaking down a lot of the things that he's seeing. Oh, what is that? Is that it?
You can kind of see the diagram at the top there. It's facing east, but it's clearly an 8-pointed star.
Facing east, just like the Sphinx faces east towards Venus, the morning star. It's interesting.
Makes perfect sense. And it's kind of like a artificial outcropping, you know? But they were doing some road work, but that's in the background. That's EFTA 011-88070. People can check that out. We're just covering all of these Eyes Wide Shut connections.
I know. What's wild too is there's a statue by one of the docks out there on his property that looks like the god Enki. And Enki is that Lucifer connection of the ancient Mesopotamian god. Oh, there you go. As soon as
there's Alice occulting the Ishtar, right?
Yes.
Literally.
Yeah, she's the mother goddess.
Yeah, the mother goddess.
And you could tell too, right? Like she has more authority over Tom Cruise in the movie.
She does. She sure does.
Because at the end of the movie, she's the one that goes, "We need to do this, right? Like we need to." Like she knows what's going on, and she's the one that makes the decision for him. So I found that interesting. Yeah, if you want to play this more, I mean, he goes into a lot more stuff.
I'm trying to find this thing on the it's somewhere on here, the monolith. I just want to show it to you because it's like a direct tie to like occultism. It's like occultism stuff. It's so. I mean, they have a big website, by the way. There's a lot of information here.
Game theory.
Applied complexity. This is what Epstein's talking about in this thing.
Wow.
They have a huge staff. Like these are probably all new age type thinkers globally.
Right. Incredible.
Yes.
One of the craziest things too, man, that I found just kind of digging into Epstein was there was footage of his library, and this was put on by James O'Keefe, when I kind of am iffy on him a little bit, but anyways, they actually got in there and they had uncensored and undercover footage of his library. There's a few interesting things that were in there. Number one, he had statues in there. Every single one of the statues was dark pigmentation and color, which has a direct connection to occult belief in transformation. It's actually called alchemical negretto. And that's one thing that is connected to the Black Madonna. The Black Madonna is the goddess, right? That the Templars worshipped at some point. And the reason why the Black Madonna, her skin pigmentation is black because it's meant to represent, not only fertility, like the mother goddess has a connection to. That whole idea of fertility is more of an agricultural fertility. So if you have like really, really fertile soil, it's really, really black, right? It's compost, which means it's going to grow life out of it. It's going to also regenerate life out of it. There's nothing that you can stop the life from constantly recycling. And that's one thing about alchemy is it's not just how Epstein discussed in the interview where these alchemists were actually mixing metals and combining metals together, because at some point the difference between each metal is because they lack neurons and electrons and protons and things like this. But they or what did I say? Neutron. I meant to say neutrons. But what's interesting is these alchemists would mix metals together to add the elements together so that they can create gold. So that's like where you get the whole idea of lead into gold. But that's one version of alchemy. The actual more potent version of alchemy that is even older than that allegory of alchemy is that there's life force energy that is a inside of everything, that is a part of everything. And this is why this has a connection to the goddess and the transformation of it, because transformation means alchemy. Alchemy is transformation. And what they would do is, and the Templars were actually pretty good at this. Even Hitler and the Vril Society was into this as well. And what their concept of thinking of alchemy was based off of, where you have 4 elements of life. You can combine these 4 elements together to create the 5th element, or you can take objects and you can extract the energy out of these objects and then create something and transform that energy into something else. This is where you get like potions and elixirs and all this whole kind of like concept of taking energy out of something. It's now in this like energy state, and then you transform it into a state of matter, and then now you can consume the state of matter, right? Because we are matter. But that's kind of like what alchemy is at a more potent level. You can either extract it from, that's why like the Hitler and his society, it's like the whole Indiana Jones thing, right? Like, why were they going and trying to find these ancient, precious, spiritual, items, right? Like the spear, right? That stabbed Jesus, right? Like, why were they going after things like this? Why are they going after the Holy Grail? Why are they going after these things? They want to be able to extract the energy, the life force energy out of this and consume it for themselves. This is where you have, for example, the fountain of youth, right? Like the fountain of youth was never really like this water that you could drink from St. Augustine. It was actually something that these alchemists were trying to extract from precious items that had spiritual significance at any time in its history, and therefore try to give them eternal life. It's almost like that's what they want to do with what we're talking about with consciousness and becoming a god. They want to live forever. Right. That's reversing the pre-Adamic sin, because death came into the material realm because of sin. So they want to like reverse the curse of death. If they can't do it, but they're trying to. And I think one way to possibly maybe prolong that instead of actually living forever like a god is to transfer their consciousness, digitize it in some sort of way, and to put it in another vessel that's compatible for that consciousness.
It's just,
I don't know.
No, it's really true. It's like he had everything. He had every material thing. He had this whole kind of retinue who did everything for him, cooked his meals, drove him. But that's what his interest was, the people over with big ideas. This is a picture from the Santa Fe Institute. They have this obelisk out where they have their teachings, and they literally use it as a chalkboard. I wish I could find a better picture of it. I don't have it, but it's basically the same dimensions as the obelisk from 2001 Space Odyssey. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really well. But
the obelisk, yeah, I mean, that's got a lot of symbolism too behind it.
Sure does.
Specifically the Egyptian mythology behind it too.
One of the other interesting things that he said that I found interesting, and it kind of ties into his later arrest, is that when he was arrested and put in jail, all he ate was almond joys because he was paranoid about the food that they were going to serve him. So it showed his distrust of the jailers, and it's reflected in the newer documents that came out. That came out January 30th. It's like he doesn't trust the jailers, but he's telling other people, information. It's really something else. But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I know. I found that funny too. I couldn't eat candy bars all day. Dude, you know what's another crazy thing too? In his library, he had on the blackboard was scratched out with a bunch of different things. Many different speculations of what was written on there came from multiple different YouTube channels. But what I found, one thing that was pretty objective, is he wrote on there dark brain. Dark brain actually connected to what he was talking about in the interview with dark matter. And underneath dark brain, it says axiom of Maria. And then underneath axiom of Maria, it says time delay. And time delay is a Carl Jung philosophy. Axiom of Maria is something that Carl Jung was very interested in. And this was something that was, a foundational alchemical precept that was attributed to the 3rd century alchemist Maria Prophetessa. And this is where axiom of Maria is where 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 3, and out of the third comes the 1 as the 4th. And so it's this step of evolution for mankind through its consciousness, how you can evolve consciousness. But usually it's kind of like when you go to Kabbalah, there's like this whole tree where you have to go to like these many routes, and you've got to pretty much like establish each route, and then you ultimately can like get to this Metatron status. It's kind of like that, but I found that interesting because it was connected to dark brain. Dark matter was connected to what he said as his thoughts of the soul. So it's just kind of all this little strings all connected to the same idea.
Yeah, I mean, Johnny, I think that this whole exercise with Bannon is to rehab his image. So he's leaving all kinds of stuff out. Like he says at the end, "Oh, my money's clean or good," or something like that. "Oh, my money's not dirty; it's dirty as hell." Like he won he was in jail and he won the lottery at New Mexico, $80 million. Give me a break. What's the likelihood of that?
That's wild, man.
Yeah, he has all kinds of money coming in from strange things. And there's money being moved around between him and Ghislaine, like 20 million bucks here and there. And he takes money. There was a tax. One of the famous stories people have talked about is the Rothschilds had some tax problems, and they just gave him 25 million to solve them, and they were solved. Like the government of the United States resolved the tax problems through the intermediary of Jeffrey Epstein in the Rothschilds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like literally a truth. So he just got some money from that. Here's 25 million. Probably saved the Rothschilds, hundreds of millions of dollars in tax liabilities or something.
Yeah.
It's through his blackmail organization.
Yeah. So you know that he was interested in Islam, right? He wanted actually a piece of the Kaaba. Do you remember hearing any of that?
I didn't know that.
So he actually was going back and forth in his emails with one of the adept Muslims over there in the Mecca area, and with the respect that he had, he actually did get a piece of the Kaaba. And the one thing that the Kaaba connects to with the divine feminine is that Kaaba is like this curtain that surrounds the meteorite rock that they at the end of the day are worshiping, the black stone. The black stone connects to other goddess cults like Kabeli or Cybele in the Indo-European area. And what's fascinating about this is in the pre-Islamic pagan religions, they worshipped that stone, right? It wasn't until that pre-Islamic pagan religion got reformed into a monotheistic religion under Allah. And what's fascinating about what was that black stone worshipped as? What god was it that was behind that stone? It was actually the god called Allat. And it's a goddess, right? It's the Arabian goddess that was worshipped as the Eastern Star. right? And that Eastern Star is connected again to Venus. It's connected to that divine feminine entity. And that whole thing with the Kaaba, well, why that iconography is connected to the goddess is because it means a dwelling place, almost like the idea of a tent, right? Where like, and what's inside the dwelling place? Think of the dwelling place as like a temple, right? Like a pagan temple that is protecting what's inside of it, right? And it's usually what's inside of it is what's worshipped as the entity itself. And so that stone has connections to the goddess. Now, what's interesting too, the iconography of Al-Lat is that she was often depicted as the feminine counterpart to the supreme deity and was culturally associated with the Greek goddess Athena and Aphrodite. What's fascinating about that is that in his library, he had sculptures of Aphrodite on top of his temple, right? The blue and white striped temple. Right. He had centaurs up on top of the temple. What were the centaurs known for in the Greeks? They were known for lifting up Aphrodite. So there's all these divine feminine connections, you know, through the iconography on his island that make me curious and kind of make me believe that he was worshiping the divine feminine, but in a different way, you know, not like he was worshiping it like the Greeks or the Romans or, you know, the Indo-Europeans or the Mesopotamians or wherever. You would even say that the United States worships the divine feminine. It's called Lady Liberty. So there's different ways to worship this thing, but how I think he worshiped it was that he believed that this force was a life force energy and that he wanted to learn how to mathematize it, calculate it, and try to shift it in some sort of way to make him a god. And I'll just leave it at that because we can go down a bunch of different rabbit holes. That's kind of wild.
I would like to see the pictures of his library. Is it on O'Keefe's website?
Yeah, let me see if I can pull up
or
a
you can
YouTube
just
video actually of
text
it.
it to me.
Yeah, I'll do that.
He was very fastidious about all his artwork and everything like that. I'm actually pretty shocked about that Kaaba. I just downloaded it. Like you can literally see it off of
Okay, I have
Epstein, yeah.
I have a video. It's actually not that long, man. You want to go through it?
Yeah. You want
All
to
right, I'll share it. I'll share it to the screen. Okay. All right, we'll run this.
Okay, cool.
If it's too loud, just let me know.
Released more never before seen video and images from inside
See, every statue is black. Every statue is dark.
Jeffrey Epstein's former island home, showing bizarre statues and a cryptic message written on a chalk.
This is a centaur head right here.
And that's a bull too, right? So that's like a
that's like that centaur, that half man, half bull.
Oh, that's it. Wow.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is he's carrying what looks like a bowl or some sort of like a cup, which that actually connects to the goddess too through the Greek goddess Rhea. Wow. So look here. Look, you could see here, dark brain.
Right.
Time delay, axiom of Maria. Music here is actually having a connection to binaural beats in hemisync. That's the gateway process, right? The CIA document that they came out with, they're trying to use both hemispheres of the brain.
Wow.
It's wild. Mirror in face. That's mirror in face. That is another occult alchemical process. It's almost like in the movie, what is it? The Matrix, where Neo is looking at the mirror and he touches it with his finger, and the mirror gets on his finger, and it consumes him entirely. That's actually connected to the Black Madonna as well. Just instead of it being a mirror, reflective material, think of it as a black goo material that transitions you into a new being. Almost like in the movie Lucy. The movie Lucy, at the end of it, when she reaches 100% capacity of using her brain and she reached that full alchemical process, she gets absorbed and she gets this black goo covering her whole entire body. So it's these little connections like that.
That's why Epstein said that weird response to Bannon right at the end. Are you of the devil? Well, I have a mirror.
Oh, dude.
That's what he's saying. He's saying something really heavy that nobody understands. It's a non sequitur to people who don't understand these things. Mirror and face.
Wow.
Steven, there are so many pictures of him either looking in the mirror or his girls in mirrors, constantly staring in the mirror. Like it's an overabundance of pictures. Like, why is this mirror everywhere? And that's makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. Listen to this ending thing. Watch this.
Some comes with money's money.
This is always a complicated.
I don't care. I want the money for my children.
I would say everyone said, I want the money for my children.
Did they know where the money came from?
I think if you told them,
if I told them
the devil,
100%.
the devil
himself
said, I'm going to exchange some dollars for your child's life.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
Bam.
There you go.
It's a non-person. People don't understand. This is a heavy-duty response, guys. That's what it is.
Worst?
No, I'm
the lowest.
I'm the lowest.
You're the lowest. Okay, tier 1, you're the lowest. But a criminal.
Your child's life.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
It's a serious question. Do you think you're the devil?
See, he's trying to see if Bannon can figure out what he's trying to say. And Bannon doesn't get it. He doesn't get it off the top.
I don't know. Why would you say that?
Because you have all the attributes. You're incredibly smart. You remember the devil is somebody knows
smart?
The devil's brilliant. You read Milton's Paradise.
I do have a good mirror. Wow. Crazy.
That's
and there it is right there on the freaking right there on the chalkboard.
Yeah.
Guys, this is really something else. Let's go back.
It's wild, man.
Jeffrey Epstein himself. The Jeffrey Epstein Island, also known as Little St. James in the Virgin Islands. Last time we took you inside the kitchen to show that really creepy image of a baby in a sink. YouTubers have snuck on the island. Luke Radowski, Tyler Olivier getting images of the outside of the structures. But today we're going to take you inside the structures, inside Jeffrey Epstein's library. We're going to take a closer look. Now,
see all the black statues, just pure blackness. Right. It's kind of weird.
This has never been seen before. We are now inside the library. Dozens of books line the walls, including literature like Ernest Hemingway's Selected Letters, vacation reads such as Robert Ludlum's The Bourne Ultimatum, denser titles like The Golden Age of Theoretical Physics, and Salman Rushdie's Satanic Verses. Now, a closer inspection revealed unusual objects, statuettes of winged figures and
so that's the beak of Horus. This is like a statue representing Lucifer right now. That's the beak of Horus, and it's a fallen angel. Which this is symbolizing balance, and that's what the occult is obsessed with: is balance, male energy, female energy, light, dark. It's the architect of this, world, so-called. Right? I'm not saying Lucifer is the architect. What I'm saying is he's really good at describing how things work. And, even with your body, like in the medical system, we call it homeostasis. It's where there is a natural balance to certain things, but that's one thing that they worship Lucifer for, right? It's weird.
Plague masks, and one of a
That's Aphrodite.
Wow. So I wonder who's like writing these. Like who's the artist of this? Because I've done a show involving Rodin. He's like one of the great French sculptors. I'm wondering if any of these are Rodin pieces. They don't look like it, but they have that same motif, this dark iron, brass, or whatever it is.
Now, there's a weird connection with this, with Aphrodite and Cybele or Cybele or Cybele in the Indo-European mother goddess cult over in that area. It's the Phrygian people. And what, Cybele was known for was regenerating her consort / son out of the ground. That's why she's known for fertility. And her consort / son was known as Attis, who Attis ended up becoming Mithra in the Roman area. And what the high priests would do to get into the cult, they had to be men, number one, but the initiation that they had to do to themselves was they had to castrate themselves, throw their biology part, on the ground of the black fertile soil, and then in the next year it would grow the food for the people. It's kind of wild, crazy cult, man. But it was a lot of allegorical understanding and worship and ritual to giving your allegiance over to the mother goddess. And so this here, her washing her private part, has a connection to Attis becoming a transgender or in some sort of way. Wow. It's not just that she's there washing herself clean. It's just there's other little connections to it.
A nude young woman washing herself while seated on a bidet. Video and photos inside the library also show a horse whip, which is right here under the chalkboard, apparently crafted from leather and bone.
You see the white rabbit?
Yep.
Yep. That's knowledge, right? Pursuit of knowledge.
And then we go to this chalkboard over here. Now, this chalkboard displayed cryptic words, including the word power, deception, mirror in face, dank brain, among others.
Dark brain.
Dark brain, right? Close.
Yeah.
It would be interesting.
Chalkboard's message remains a mystery, and we're hoping that some of you in the audience can help decipher and ascertain what Epstein might be talking about here. This is, again, right after he was arrested. We compared the words on the chalkboard to a note Epstein wrote in his prison cell before his death. Several letters and letter combinations from the note match those on the chalkboard, which leads us to believe they were in fact written by Jeffrey Epstein. And we're not sure what this means, but we're hoping you in the audience can take a look at this and tell us what you think he was trying to say here. Was it a message he was sending?
Yeah, that's music and brain right here. It's kind of wild.
To the world.
Knew that, yeah.
We're receiving a lot of images, videos, and photos as a result of our reporting. These sources reaching out to us include those within the government, people who don't trust anybody, including our own department.
That's pretty much it, though. And he kind of winds it down and plugs his stuff. But yeah,
one of the interesting things is there's so many mirrors in Eyes Wide Shut. Like, this is a recurring theme of our talk. But like, the promotional picture is both of them in a mirror,
Yeah.
And she's looking in the, like you say, that she's the primary. You're right. Bill Harford is kind of like an empty vessel. Like he's just kind of going around responding. She's the operational one, the mother goddess, but there's mirrors all throughout that film, man.
Dude, there's another angel here too that's different than the other one that we saw. So look at these other black statues, man. That is alchemical negredo, man. Like that is what that means, man.
And that's the red theme throughout the entire film of Eyes Wide Shut, right?
Yes.
It's like everything's red. So like you have this weird pool table that's red. Plus the
red is like
floor.
power,
Yeah. The ritual floor's red. They're walking down the red room, the red stall. And we know Kubrick was like super fastidious about every detail. So it looks like Jeff is pretty detail oriented as well.
Yeah. Oh, and here I'll screen share this too. So come here. This is just a quick little Google breakdown of what this means here. Alchemical negredo is pretty much negredo is is Latin for blackness, right? And is the initial foundational stage of alchemical magnum opus, the great work, right? It represents a process of putrefaction, decomposition, and death. Just like how this has a mother goddess connection, because the mother goddess is represented in springtime when things grow. But what happens in the winter? Things die, just like how Osiris died and he went down into the underworld. And then in the springtime, she impregnates immaculately because she has the ability to bring her husband's spirit out of the underworld and put it into her. She is the only one that can deliver and create life. And there you have a regeneration once again. And that is where I get the connection with Axiom of Maria, where one becomes two, two becomes three, and out of the third becomes the fourth. And it's like this, it's just this evolution until you can't evolve anymore. You've reached godhood, you've reached the God status. Well done, occultist.
That's the whole goal, is man as God, right?
And look, the Philosopher's Stone, right, is connected to that, the whole alchemical Negretto, right? That's the Philosopher's Stone, is that eternal life, that elixir of life, that process of becoming a god.
So all of Jeff's work is an alchemical process. They mentioned alchemy. So he's trying to create he's just like Newton. You know that half of Newton's work was alchemy. Like he gets all this credit for this other stuff, but he was a major alchemist. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But that was considered science back then. Like it was kind of, they thought that that was the cutting edge of science.
Yeah. Look here, so what that is too, right? That process is the breakdown and the rebirth. That's exactly what I just talked about with Cabelli and Addis. You know, she that's why the priests, the Gali, would throw their castration into the black soil so it would regenerate. See how it's chaotic? That ritual is very chaotic for the priests in the initiation, and then it's because it's to regenerate after that. It's all these little allegories and these microcosms all over the place with this goddess stuff.
Can you re-emphasize or restate the importance of the mirror for Diana? So like what he's saying.
Yeah, so the whole thing with Diana, you mean?
Well, this is from the chat on the bottom. She says, "I don't understand what Epstein's saying. I have a mirror means."
Oh, so I have a mirror, right? It's like where you look at yourself in the mirror, and when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, it's that occult idea of you're looking at your alter ego, right? You're looking at what you're trying to incorporate into yourself, right? It's about destroying the ego. And if you destroy the ego, then you can move forward onto the next step. For example, is this, right? Before you do something bad, your conscious and your ego is telling you, I shouldn't do this. But if you learn how to destroy that, then you have removed the limitations of actually moving forward with this alchemical spiritual process to become a god and to do certain things with your brain, with the metaphysical world, and so on and so forth. It's like, for example, it's another way to put it is in Alice Bailey's work. Alice Bailey wrote a book called Intellect and Intuition. And in there, she got a lot of her sources from theosophy, right? Helena Blavatsky was the person who created theosophy, and where Blavatsky said that humanity was at that time in the late 1800s and the early 1900s was that humanity was in the fifth root race, right? The fifth state of evolution of humanity. But she said that there would be a sixth root race and a seventh root race to come, which means the sixth stage and the seventh stage of humanity, of its evolution. But in order to get into the sixth root race, according to Alice Bailey, is that you had to lower your intellect and increase your intuition. You had to destroy that ego in some sort of way, and your intellectual way of thinking, and rely more on intuition and spiritual thought and management with your conscious state. And that's how you evolve, and you kind of try to connect back to source, or you try to become like a spiritual ethereal being once again. It's so wild, man.
They have it in the occult. It's very much in the O9A. That's why they use mirrors. And Crowley, I think he called it crossing the abyss, where you dissolve your ego. That, just like you said, you're dissolving the ego, but you're doing it for the occult progression. And
Like
there's-
I heard a guy, his name's Jake Barber. He's a psionic asset. He works for Skywatcher, and he was the guy who had an encounter with the egg-shaped UFO. He was a helicopter pilot for a contracted helicopter pilot for transporting unknown materials, and he just went and did his job. And he's a guy who had this weird spiritual connection with this UFO egg that he picked up, and he said that he was encompassed with divine feminine love and motherly love when he was picking up this UFO. Well, further down the line, he started to realize that the military has psionic assets, which are pretty much occultists that are in the military that are not only summoning UFOs, but they're actually controlling UFOs with their mind. And so he became a psionic asset. He got involved with, independent corporations that were mimicking and trying to do the same thing that the military is doing. And so how he says that you can get into these certain states to usher UFOs, to control them, and to summon them in some sort of way, is he even tells you on the Jesse Michaels podcast that you have to lower your intellect and increase your intuition. He's literally parroting off of Alice Bailey's New Age occult work. And what's fascinating is, he was talking about people in these experiences where they'd get into these meditations and they get into these states and they're actually moving these craft. And then they kind of like open up their eyes and they look and they see the craft is moving. And then they go, oh crap. And then the craft falls down to the ground. It's because their ego has come back into the equation. And it's the ego that restricts you from performing metaphysical capabilities, moving things with your mind and all of this stuff, where I think that stuff of the occult is possible, but you have to destroy your intellect. I don't advocate for it. I'm a Christian. I don't advocate for any of this stuff. But what I'm saying is when you look biblically and you look in Exodus, you could see that Moses threw his staff down on the ground, right? He's challenging Pharaoh, right? And to take the people out of Egypt, to take the Israelites out of Egypt. He throws his staff on the ground, and through the power of God, God changes the staff into a snake. Well, the Magi that were on both sides of the Pharaoh had the same exact capabilities that God could do, because those Magi threw their staffs down, and it turned into snakes as well. It was just an awesome thing of the story where Moses' snake, the staff, ate the other two snakes, so it kind of like shows that God's like more powerful, even if you can do the miracles that the Holy Spirit can. So it's wild, dude. And I think that that's what they're trying to do. I think that that's what the New Age is pushing. I think that's what the New Age wants to move forward with making us as gods, to where we're going to be able to do very interesting metaphysical things that the human capacity has the potential for. So, and I think that technology is going to be able to either flip that switch on or off. If people don't know how to do these things through meditation, it's okay. Don't worry about it. We've got technology we want to put in your brain, we want to put in your body, and you can do it that way if you want.
Right. It's like accelerating the magical power. It is interesting that Epstein avoids the word magic. He says magic has a bad connotation. I don't want to use that. He says that in the interview. He also calls himself a hermit, which is an interesting word. And it's probably a very interesting root word, because it's like Hermes, hermetic, all those other things. He's not really a hermit. He may stay at home all the time, but he's definitely communicating and talking to people constantly. It's really something else. Karuna asked, did Epstein have a collaboration with modern alchemists like Chabad Lubavitch, for instance? I don't know. Do you know anything about that, Stephen?
No, I don't. Let me look it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, though. I think we're just continuing to learn. Everything's unfolding. Like you mentioned Gino Yu at the beginning. I know Trivers. In the files, a whistleblower claimed to witness King Charles ministering a child sacrifice ritual on Epstein Island. So yes. Where is that file? Which file is that? I haven't seen it. Although I came across a file recently about adrenochrome. Somebody was talking about adrenochrome being harvested which is really crazy. Cosmic Crowley actually mentions the egg as like a spiritual vehicle, so it would make sense that it's UFOs, or which are kind of demonic, or are demonic, might be. He calls about, there's some kind of, I forgot, it was like a demon in an egg, or it was one of his, I think it maybe even mentioned in the Book of the Law. It's been a while since I talked about it, but that egg symbol, I remember Crowley and the scrying mirrors and all that stuff. So, but yeah, the dissolution of the ego is a huge thing within Crowley, OTO, and O9A. It's like it's almost like what they really mean is the dissolution of your personality, and then the bringing something. Solvet coagula, right? The alchemical Latin phrase of dissolution and resolution.
It's that chaos and then rebirth. Yeah, it's a constant.
Which is on that guy. What's the demon god? No, the goat-headed god, right?
Baphomet.
Baphomet, the classical one from Eliphas Levi, has Solvet coagula on Baphomet's arms.
It's crazy. I heard a Knights Templar the other day talk about the Baphomet being a representation of Sophia, actually.
Well, it makes perfect sense.
Which is funny, because then that connects to the Black Madonna, that connects to the goddesses, that connects to the whole general idea of that entity, or that understanding of what that entity represents. I don't know.
Well, we're all still learning. I just learned something new today. I didn't know all that statuary stuff on Little St. James, so I'm glad you brought that to my attention. And also just how interesting this discussion is. The mirror thing, that non sequitur makes perfect sense. He's trying to say something heavy-duty occult to him. Is that, I think his response of that, I have a mirror, is that, yes, I am trying to become Satan. Like, I'm literally trying to become the devil. That's what he's really saying.
It's funny here. It says, in the occult, the mirror represents a liminal portal functioning as a boundary between the physical and spiritual realms. It is heavily utilized for scrying, spiritual shielding, and shadow work, which is the ego, acting not just as a physical reflector of light, but as a symbolic reflector of unseen energies, truth, and intent. So there you go. Scrying, right? The obsidian mirror, right? It's kind of like that what the Aztecs used to do back in the day.
You know, maybe that was his whole thing with having sex with all these women, is that this was kind of like his kind of sex magic. And that's why he had pictures of these women looking in mirrors, is because he saw this kind of whatever. I don't know if he had kids or whatever, but the act was like it wasn't just like a sexual, there was levels of meaning for him.
Well, you know what's crazy? We just circled back around to Eyes Wide Shut. What was that whole point of that night event, right? Which is the most popular part of the movie, right? The most shocking part of the movie is they're having this entire sex cult where everyone's kind of learning how to destroy their ego, right? By the wearing of the masks and all this. But also, I've also read that in the occult, what they would do in these sex rituals is they would have their minds set on something else. And they would be doing the act, which would like release a bunch of different chemicals in the body. It would create it would activate a bunch of different pathways in the neurology of and the activity of the brain. And if you have your mind set on with intent on these other things, you'll actually what is it, the law of attraction, right? So it's kind of like, you thinking about it, your mind is set on this, you're doing all this spiritual energy ritual towards it, and you'll achieve it. You'll put it into manifestation, if that makes sense.
It does, 100% does.
Yeah, that's wild.
So maybe he was doing like some advanced sex magic with these, and these women were his, like Crowley used his Scarlet Woman. It's like inspiration and energetic, and it always involves sex. And so maybe that's why Epstein was so, like, he had like this kind of industrial scale thing going on, is that he was doing something other than just kind of like fornicating or whatever. He might have been doing, if you see the room, like the massage room is weird because, let me see if I can pull that up, but I don't know if I have it like actually under the massage room, but there's like a drape. Like there's a pretty sizable drape for a wall. So like there's nothing this is in the I'll show it to you. Here it is. This is like a weird picture. Like watch this. This is the mirror, and this is like one of it. This is there's multiple massage rooms. There was one in Little St. James. There's one in Palm Beach, but this is the one in the mansion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a blank wall, but there's the picture of the woman looking in the mirror, right?
Yeah.
And then what's weird is like there's either some kind of sonogram or whatever, that white thing, but there is a drape. This thing seems to move along a pathway in the top, so like you could open it and close it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a wall behind there. So why do you have a drape? So it's certain things you could see this woman in a mirror, looking in a mirror, like it's being held. These are redacted. I have no idea what these pictures are, but this one just, and it's the picture of the woman. It's, I don't know. It's weird. It's not like it's not. I don't think it's very flattering picture of a female is maybe a way to put it. I don't know. Maybe you guys think. But this is like this is the motif of the mirror, just one part of it, right? So he was interested in mirrors. There's just absolutely no question about it. So maybe he was doing some kind of energetic stuff with the kids that he was abusing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. For sure, man.
Especially if you look at his, like he had books from like this guy Hyatt, who was like a heavy hitting occultist, like really far up there in the occult world, wrote books and all this stuff. Like it used to Christopher Hyatt, there used to be like videos of the guy, just scary as hell. And smart. I think he was like a doctor, but like writing books on this type of subject, it's very weird.
Yeah, so there's a few things here. So the occult and esoteric tradition, an image of a female looking into a mirror symbolizes the dual nature of reality, the physical material world versus the unseen spiritual realm. It typically represents self-knowledge, scrying / divination, the illusion of the ego, or a gateway between dimensions.
There you go.
There you go.
That's why he says I have a mirror. That's his obsession with mirrors. He literally is freaking like a warlock figure. Like I think that confirms it. Confirmed, man. He's probably doing sex magic with these kids. That's the whole thing. That's why he's bringing them in. He might be like Crowley used his Scarlet Women as almost like a vampire uses something. Like they all got drained by Crowley at the end. They all just looked drawn and drained out. And maybe that's why he had these young kids, is they have like a vampire, they have the most energy or whatever. It gets that, it could be that crazy.
Right. And I'll tell you what, like there's
sense.
something very significant about the woman, right? With occult ritual, occult practice,
Always.
Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard,
Always.
Crowley,
Even
Marjorie
LaVey,
Cameron, right?
Even LaVey, when they would do the rituals, the temple would be called a woman lying on her back. It wouldn't even be a temple. The woman was the what's the word? Like the ritual implement. Like she was the chalice. She didn't symbolize the chalice. She was it.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
Dude, this goes back to like Dragon Court mysteries, where my buddy Doc Brown, he's been doing this study with the Dragon Court. The Dragon Court is like pretty much this, what they believe to be this bloodline lineage that goes all the way back to the garden, goes all the way back to the serpent. And the rituals that they would do by eating the menstrual cycles of women and all this stuff to try and like it was that philosopher's stone, right? Like it would serve the same purpose. It's just, it gets really sophisticated, but it was still wild anyway.
But that's Crowley, yeah. Crowley's Cakes of Light and all that stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's supposed to be a mix. And then it goes into probably Abramovich, what she's doing, you know, like literal cannibalism. So all this knowledge of all this dark stuff validates the claims or the possibility of them being cannibals. Like this doesn't take away from that speculation, but it actually makes it more likely that they literally were eating people. I mean, it's really that bad. Stephen, we are at the 90-minute mark. This has been a outstanding conversation, and I, after 90 minutes, have learned so much more about these guys. Like this, you can kind of put it together. Look at her; she's looking into the mirror.
Yeah.
I am not the devil, but I have a mirror. That means I'm in contact with him. That's the cryptic statement that Epstein is saying to the normal non-initiate. That is a non sequitur. It doesn't follow. But that's how smart the occultists are. What they know to work in code words, and they just talking in code words all the time on his emails, like code word after code word after code word.
Symbols speak 1,000 words, right?
Where can they find your stuff? The Biblical Hitmen. Check it out, guys.
Yeah. Biblical Hitmen, YouTube, audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcast. And I do have a Patreon, patreon.com/The Biblical Hitman. I put all my ad-free stuff in. You can direct chat with me over there if you're interested. But William, thank you, man. Hopefully, I added to your bookshelf a little bit because you added to mine as well. So it's always fun.
Iron sharpens iron, as they say, right? So that was my old buddy. That's my old buddy, Johnny McMahon. Well, one of my first shows I ever did. That was his famous dictum, it's like his biblical statement. But wow, this really is blowing my mind. I got to go take a walk or get outside. Anyway, it's Stephen D. Mattis at The Biblical Hitman. Check it out. I'll put the links to his podcast and Patreon in the show notes. We had 200 live listeners. Thanks for the chat, all the great chats and comments. And you definitely have a fan, and at least a couple of new fans on the chat, Steve. So, guys,
I see Tara there. Tara, what's up, Tara? Yeah, there's a few of them in there. Good to see everybody.
Guys, share the show. It's free. I know times are tough. You don't have to spend any money. Just share, or actually, the real grapevine actually works. So, if you found something new in this discussion, like I did, go have dinner with your friends and talk about it, and tell them. That actually works probably better than social media, actually, because people remember. At least we give people out there something to talk about with friends or other researchers or people interested in this stuff. So much appreciated, guys. Much appreciated, Stephen. And thanks for all the chatters. I have been streaming a lot more. Somebody mentioned that. And it seems to be paying off to a certain sense. So Stephen D. Matisse, The Biblical Hitman. Check it out. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. All right, stay there.